listener. Welcome to today's episode of Across the Bifrost. My name is Ryan Doze. I am your host, and today we are going to explore the world of Marvel's Mighty Thor with our Throwback Thor's Day series. We are back. We are revamped a little bit. We're ready to go. I can't wait to share these 2 issues of Journey into Mystery with you today. We're going to look into issue 95 and 96. It's going to be a good time. Again, really excited that you're joining us on this episode because we're right in between a 2-part interview on our Monday show with Loki, Where Mischief Lies author Mackenzie Lee. So if you haven't checked out part 1, go back, listen to part 1 so that you're ready for part 2 when it drops on Monday. Super excited about that. That was a phenomenal conversation that we got to have. Also, today, as of this recording, the finale of Loki has happened. The Disney Plus show, the 6 episodes we got have occurred. They have washed over us and blown our minds. The finale of Loki was legitimately an insane thrill ride. Everyone that I've talked to about it has just been in awe of everything that happened, everything we learned, and a little bit of the surprise and shock that we got from some of the announcements related to that show. So we're right in the middle of the finale happening, and then all the coverage that here on Across the Bifrost we're going to do as we kind of break down the series as a whole. So this next Monday, on our Monday episode, we'll have part 2 of our Mackenzie Lee interview, and we'll also break down the final episode of Loki by itself. Then in 2 Mondays, put this on your podcasting calendar, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss this episode. In 2 Mondays, we are going to do a panel discussion of the entire season of Loki, all 6 episodes. We're bringing back some of your favorite reviewers. We are going to also open up voice messaging for this episode. So this episode that's coming up, our roundtable panel discussion, we want to get you involved in the show. So in the show notes of this episode, you can go and click on a link that will say leave a voice message. So if you have thoughts, hot takes, you want to just, rant and rave about Loki, click on that link so you can be a part of that roundtable episode in a few weeks. We would love for you to be a part of that, to join the Across the Bifrost crew and be just excited with us. Look forward to what's going to happen to the Marvel Cinematic Universe after the fallout of Loki. We want you to be a part of the show. Go to that link, click it, leave us a voicemail, and we will get you on the show. That is one way you can be a part of the show. Another way you can do that is by subscribing, like we just said, rating the podcast, reviewing it on iTunes. That really does help a lot. We're going to start sharing reviews on the show. We've got a few reviews stockpiled up. We're going to start sharing those, what people have said about the show. People have been really nice and really encouraging so far. So we want to make sure that they're blessed with a shout out on the show. We want to give them credit for the things they've said about the show. And also you can follow us on Instagram at Across the Bifrost. That's where you can interact with us. Our DMs are always open. We always want to talk about Loki. We always want to talk about Thor. We always want to talk about his world. So be sure to follow us there and like our stuff, share our stuff. And one thing I just want to encourage everybody that listens to the show. If you know someone that would like this show, share it with a friend. I know when we were kids, we learned the little lesson, right? Sharing is caring. So share this episode with a friend. Care for your friend by sharing the gift of Across the Bifrost. That would be an awesome way to support the show and to make sure that your friends are listening to awesome podcasts about awesome superheroes. So that is all the notes that I have for you. We'll come back at the end of the episode just to remind you of a few things going forward and what we got coming up. But in the meantime, enjoy the return of Throwback Thor's Day. We're looking at Journey into Mystery 95 and 96. We'll see you in a little bit. Enjoy this episode. Here we go. Journey into Mystery 95. It's entitled The Demon Duplicators. You see the cover right there for those of you that are watching on video. It came out in August of 1963. Here were some things that were happening in the world in August of 1963. The Great Train Robbery had just taken place in Buckinghamshire, England. So, famous robbery that took place there. Millions of pounds were stolen off of a train, and then I think it was a team with like 15 people were arrested that were a part of that whole heist. Then an important moment in the civil rights world, James Meredith becomes the first Black person to graduate from the University of Mississippi. So that's a big milestone there in the early 60s. And the biggest thing that was happening in August of 1963 was Martin Luther King had just delivered his I Have a Dream speech. He did it on the steps of Lincoln Memorial. There were about 250,000 people there. This all took place during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. It was a big milestone in the civil rights movement of the early 60s. And at this point in U.S. history, it was the largest protest in American history. So big things are happening in the world. Also, wanted to give you some people that had died this month and some people that were being born this month. Just so, again, you kind of know where we're at in history. The famous civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois was pronounced dead this month. He was a sociologist and an author, a big mover and shaker in the civil rights movement. So he had passed away during this month. And 4 people that were born this month. Actor Mark Strong, who is known for many movies like Kingsman. He was in the Shazam movies. He's been in so many different things. The frontman for Metallica, James Hetfield, was born this month. So for all you rockers out there, James Hetfield was born in August of 1963. The famous Full House actor John Stamos was born this month. And the legendary powerhouse singer Whitney Houston was born this month as well. So all those things, context, August of 1963, what's going on then? We jump into our comic, 1995 issue of Journey into Mystery. We don't really have any profound first appearances. It does give us the first appearance of Professor Zaxton, who is the villain for this month. He is a one-shot villain. He doesn't show up again, and he kind of just serves as a foil of the month for Thor. As has been the case, the plot of this comic was done by Stan Lee. It was written by Robert Bernstein, who is put in the credits of this issue as Rod Burns, so kind of a alias pseudonym that he used while he was writing for Marvel, and the art is done by Joe Sinnott. So let's jump into the actual issue. So we see on the opening splash page that Thor is up against himself this month. He is up against a duplicate version of himself. We'll find out how we get there in just a moment. So on that first page, we see the evil version of Thor say, "Farewell, Thor. Within seconds, I shall destroy you with a double hammer blow." So the evil version of Thor is seen with wielding not just one, but 2 hammers on this opening page. So the second page of the issue, Odin has summoned Thor back to Asgard to solve a problem for the Asgardian gods. There's been a drought, so Thor starts a rainstorm and kind of leaves it, sets it and forgets it. He heads back to Midgard. Page 3, we see Professor Zaxton, the villain of the issue. He is doing a demonstration of a new android that he has created. And with the power of Thor, he's showing off the android's various skills and abilities. So we get to see him rip apart the door of a safe. And Thor is thinking at the end of this page, how could he be when I secretly am Blake himself? Zaxton is a friend of Blake's, and he laments that Blake can't be at the presentation today. And Thor's like, aha, but little does he know, I am Professor Blake. I am Dr. Blake. Sorry, Professor Zaxton is the professor. Sorry. So on the 4th page, we get to see continued displays of the android's strength. He solves a math problem. He's also indestructible to the hammer, which takes Thor by surprise. On page 5, we get to see why Zaxton wants these androids to really catch on. He thinks he could make them into super soldiers, but something goes wrong with the android, and Thor is forced to go into action when the android is set to blow up because of the substances he's made of. He's unstable and something's going wrong. So Thor rips apart the door that had kept him in the metal crate earlier on in the issue. He rips that apart, and then he wraps the android up in it on page 6, and he hurls him into the sky with Mjolnir, and the android blows up, keeping everybody safe so that nobody was injured that was there at the demonstration. And Zaxton is not having it, thinks that Thor has ruined the android that he was going to, take over the world with. He was going to change the world with this android, and Thor ruined it. Doggone it, Thor. Come on, man. So we see later on, Donald Blake goes back to his office, and who is there? On page 7, Dr. Zaxton is in his office, and he's showing off a brand new weapon invention. It's the duplicator. So he can duplicate any object that the ray is pointed at. So he displays that on a chair, on a typewriter, on several things to really show Donald Blake what's going on here, because Donald Blake was part of ruining his previous display because he wasn't there to help him fix the android before it exploded. So Zaxton tries to blackmail Donald Blake into helping him, and Donald Blake figures out that really the best way to get rid of this villain is to just help him. And he fine-tunes the duplicator so that nothing will go wrong like last time, that his invention won't explode this time. And they actually, I'm just going to zoom in here, they actually show a bit of Donald Blake thinking, while Zaxton is admiring his invention, I'll slip inside and change to Thor, and I'll rescue Jane. Zaxton had also, sorry, I forgot this, Zaxton had also kept Jane hostage so that Donald Blake would help him. Big plot point that Donald Blake loves Jane and he wants to keep her safe. So the best way to do that is to appease Zaxton and help him out with this experiment. We also get to see Zaxton experiment on some cats. He makes like 6 or 7 cats just to show Donald Blake that it can also work on living organisms. Next, on page 9, the stakes of the issue get more drastic. We see Zaxton discover that Thor is here, and he puts it together that Donald Blake must be Thor. So Zaxton says, "Great Scott, I'm seeing things. You, Blake, have transformed yourself into Thor." So at this point, Zaxton is the only mortal that knows that Donald Blake is also Thor. So Zaxton zaps him with the duplicator. And interesting fact we learned about the duplicator machine right here is that when it duplicates a living being, it inverts the personality of that other being. Of course, we need a villain for Thor to fight. So good, noble, honorable Thor is duplicated into an evil version of himself. So that kind of sets up the main physical conflict of the climax of this issue. And also he duplicates Mjolnir, so this evil Thor now has 2 hammers. He wields 2 versions of Mjolnir, so he's double the trouble and he's double the evil of Thor. How could Zaxton lose? I mean, this is the end of Thor. Didn't you know this, listener, that in Journey into Mystery 95, this is the end of Thor. We never see Thor ever again. Of course, Thor jumps into action. None of that's going to happen on his watch. He goes after the duplicate Thor, and he actually is able to stun the evil copy of him for just a little bit on page 10. But then we jump over to page 11 and we see this kind of cool sequence. I'm actually gonna, for those of you watching on video, I'm gonna zoom in on this, but multiple airplanes are shown because Zaxton he duplicates all these airplanes to keep Thor away from the duplicate as our Thor, the hero Thor, is chasing him down. All these planes are duplicated. There's a dozen airliners, he says, and he doesn't know exactly what to do. He flies around them, and then on page 12, we see I'll say this, we see an interesting climax to this issue, to Journey into Mystery 95. So Thor throws back both Mjolnirs at the evil version of himself, and the evil version of Thor starts to fade away. We see Thor even thinking, ironically, from the start, I had nothing to fear from Zaxton's duplicate. And now, as my own enchanted mallet strikes him, he's fading away into nothingness from whence he came. Because he can't sustain this evil duplicate any longer. And what happens next is Thor flies after Zaxton, and Zaxton trips off of the bridge that he is standing on as he's surveying the fight that just took place. Zaxton trips off of the bridge, and he says, "No, in my nervousness, the machine slipped out of my hands, and I must grab it before it falls over the parapet." Zaxton falls, and Thor even thinks to himself, down below, Zaxton is tripping over the parapet. I must try to save him. So even this guy who's come after Thor, he's like, man, I gotta go save this guy. And for the first time that I can recall, we see Thor unable to save someone's life. Zaxton falls to his death under the bridge, not before a duplicate of Zaxton himself is made. And remember, Zaxton is this evil professor. So when he makes a duplicate of himself, that duplicate is good. So Thor decides that it is for the best. The world has rid itself of a cruel menace, and in his place stands a scientific genius who shall do good where the original only did bad. We see Thor go and save Jane, and then Thor returns to Asgard to, cease the reign that he had started earlier on in the issue. And he even says, Odin had even thought that Thor had forgotten Asgard. And Thor says, forget Asgard? Never, my father. For no matter what adventures may summon me to the world below, this is the land my heart calls home. So we get a little bit of a heartwarming display there by Thor at the end of the issue. So this issue I thought was pretty decent. It summed up some interesting questions, like why is there an evil Thor, and why does evil Thor wield two hammers? I liked the inventiveness of it. I think some of the little details were maybe a little too easily explained away. Maybe we didn't need the android at the beginning to display Zaxton's evil intentions. Maybe a little bit more with duplicate Thor might have been a little more higher stakes, but I'm critiquing a comic that's like 50 plus years old. So it was definitely good for its time, entertaining for its time. So that was Journey into Mystery 95. We go right into Journey into Mystery 96. On the big cover, we see Thor fighting a wizard. This has got to be good. Journey into Mystery 96 is entitled Defying the Magic of the Mad Merlin. So this issue came out in September 1963. Here's some things that were going on in September of 1963. The Pro Football Hall of Fame opens up in Canton, Ohio, and it has 17 original members. So that is beginning then. We're starting to enshrine people in sports Hall of Fames. On the civil rights front, the 16th Street church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama took place. It claimed the lives of 4 people and several were injured. That was a big milestone in the not a milestone in a positive way, but just a thing to remember, a thing to recall, to lament about the civil rights movement in the early 60s. Death, people, I'm saying that so flippantly, but like a famous individual who died that month was the Disney composer Oliver Wallace. You may not know his name off the top of your head, but some of the works that he did were definitely classics. He did the score for Peter Pan, for Cinderella, Lady and the Tramp, Dumbo, and Alice in Wonderland. So his work definitely still appreciated to these days. And I love the people that were born this month because they're all like people maybe only I appreciate. Maybe it's only me. That's fine. But former WWE wrestler Steve Blackman was born this month. Those of you that maybe know professional wrestling maybe remember Steve Blackman. I personally enjoyed him in the late 90s. The actor Tate Donovan was born this month. I know him mostly from the Hercules animated movie that Disney put out. He was the voice of Hercules. Or honey, you mean Huncules. He was the voice of Hercules. Also, he did a stint on Friends that was awesome. I'm sure he's done other things, but those are the two that I remembered him from. Baseball players that were born this month. Outfielder Cecil Fielder was born this month, and Hall of Famer Randy Johnson was born this month. The thing I remember about Randy Johnson, if by chance you are a baseball fan, is when Randy Johnson threw a pitch that was so fast that as it was getting to the plate, a bird flew across home plate and he obliterated this bird with like a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. It was like the craziest thing I think I've ever seen in sports. So Randy Johnson, Hall of Fame pitcher, born in September of 1963. First appearances in this issue, we get a very important first appearance, Mad Merlin. So he shows up in future iterations of really all sorts of comics. And despite being called Merlin in this issue, he's not really the legendary wizard from Arthur's court. He is instead a mutated human. He explains that in the issue, actually. And he is known under a different name, most notably Mahayogi is a name that appears with him pretty prominently later on in comics. This issue also includes a famous last appearance. So we're only about 12 issues into Thor's run, but this issue features the last appearance of John F. Kennedy in the Marvel continuity at the time. So we're in September of 1963. John F. Kennedy would be assassinated. He would be killed in November. So 2 months from now, John F. Kennedy is killed. And it's the last time that he's mentioned in the Marvel Universe in the current continuity at the time. And Marvel even at the time did not really refer to his assassination. It was something that for whatever reason they did not include in their publications as a main thought or even as a memoriam thing, but he does appear in this issue. The plot of this issue of Journey into Mystery 96 was done by Stan Lee. It was written by Robert Bernstein, and the art was done by Joe Sennett, the same creative team that we get on the last issue. So on our first page, we see a sarcophagus being lowered out of a boat. And we learn from the context of the shipyard people that Merlin, who they assume is from King Arthur's court, is being brought to the museum. Thor is looking very sneaky, and he's lurking around. I don't know why he's hiding from people, but he's going to investigate. We see on this opening page, page 2, some dialogue between Jane and Donald Blake. Jane has kind of had enough of Donald Blake flying away. Well, she doesn't know he's flying away, but really getting away from his patients and being sequestered in his laboratory for hours on end, and she's had enough with him. Of course, Donald Blake can't tell her why he's gone so often, and here we get a a retelling. Donald Blake tells us why he was gone and why he missed his patients for an hour or two. He was saving a busload of people from the bottom of the river, and we see Thor, really a cool little shot here. He's wrapping a steel cable underneath a bus, and then he we see on the next page he wraps it to Mjolnir, and then he hurls the hammer through the water, and it goes all the way back to the East Side bus terminal, and it lands. And we go back to Donald Blake and Jane in the office after this explanation of why Donald Blake had been gone. She gives him a little bit of a speech about responsibility. And what I've noticed about early Marvel comics, especially Stan Lee, Jack Kirby era comics, is responsibility and doing the right thing is a theme that we see a lot in Spider-Man, Captain America, especially in Thor, that heroes do the right thing. They do what the responsible thing, the honorable thing. So I find it interesting here that just because Jane doesn't know that Donald Blake is Thor, Jane gives him a speech about responsibility. And Donald Blake even says, poor Jane, if she only knew. On the next page, page 5, we get to see the sarcophagus open, and Merlin the Mad comes out, and they almost wonder, like, why is he so perfected? Like, he looks like he died just yesterday. How could this be? And Merlin jumps out of the sarcophagus after everyone is gone, and he says, they're gone. My master plan is working perfectly. They think I'm dead, but I never died. Never. So we learn on the next page that Merlin is a genius trickster. He's not truly the wizard that maybe we know from popular English myth, but he was using tricks and illusions, and his powers of telepathy, his powers of illusion to, we'll say, trick King Arthur and his court to gain standing with them. Also, I just gotta say, look at the mug on this guy. He is for lack of a better word, he's just an ugly dude. He's all squinty eyed, and he's very hunched over. He's got a long kind of witch like nose. Not a face really only a wizard's mother could like. On page 7, we see him. He says he's gonna go, and he's gonna try to get the attention of the president at the time, John F. Kennedy. And the best way to do that is to go to a missile launch site and try and mess with the testing of this new rocket. Also, I just want to show you this little panel here. My goodness, that is some up close and personal drawing of someone's eyeball. That is menacing. So we get close-ups of Merlin. He is skulking around and messing with this rocket test, and Donald Blake sees it from his office. He sees what's going on. He sees that the rocket is off course, and determines that he's going to turn into Thor, and he's going to go fix the situation for the U.S. Army, who is doing the test. As Thor is flying away on this test, he thinks to himself, this kind of magic, this feels a lot like my brother. It feels a lot like my brother Loki. So what I love about this is he has the time to fly all the way to Asgard after he's fixed the situation with the rocket. He flies all the way to Asgard. Loki is there, chained up along the wall where we left him, and he says, Loki says, you've wasted your time, Thor. This time, I'm not guilty. He's like, most of the time I am, but this time I am not guilty. And Loki explains who who Merlin is. He explains that he's a 1,000-year-old trickster like himself, and that he is very powerful. Thor, flying away from Loki, says, "Great Odin, if Merlin's alive, I've got my work cut out for me. With his fantastic powers, he could be a terrible menace to the earth." So Thor flies back to Midgard, and then we jump back in with Merlin. He goes to a he goes to Washington D.C. He goes to a Washington D.C. police department. He demands that these police officers get him an audience with the president, the ruler of this land, this President John F. Kennedy that he's heard about. The police officers kind of, they call him a crackpot. They don't take him seriously. He claims to be Merlin, and they're like, "Oh, the guy that they uncovered from the sarcophagus the other day." And he's like, "Yes, the one and the same. Do not challenge my powers," he tells them. And then on the next page, we get to see Merlin go a little next level crazy. On page 9, he breaks into the White House. So there's an interesting panel here that really, I don't know, it's crazy. In my 2021 brain, I just know this would never happen today. So this guy, this crazy wizard, dressed like a wizard, all, big-eyed, crazy-eyed guy, walks into the White House, speaks to a security officer, and the security officer takes Merlin to the press secretary. He says, "Excuse me, Mr. Secretary, but this screwball just turned up, says he's Merlin, and he wants to see the president." Okay. And the press secretary says, "First, nobody can see the president without an appointment. So if Merlin had an appointment, this wouldn't be a problem? Is that what you're saying to me, Mr. Secretary? Second of all, the president has enough problems without being bothered by crackpots. That will be all, officer." So very casual conversation. It sounds like the beginning of a joke. Like, the wizard walks into the White House, and you do what? You just be like, "You don't have an appointment. Make an appointment, and maybe we can talk about it later." So Merlin gets mad, and he goes on a little bit of a rampage in the White House, looking for this president that everyone's been talking about. And I'll zoom in on this for those of you who are watching on video. We get to see the drawing, the rendering of John F. Kennedy, and Merlin says to himself, "This guy looks too young to be a ruler." I wonder if that's a little bit of Stan Lee commentary there, or I don't know. It seems like an interesting inclusion. He looks far too young. I'll have to keep searching further till I find this president they talk about. Apparently, John F. Kennedy is way too young to be the president. I still think at this point he is the youngest president that we've had in the United States. So Thor is on the pursuit of Merlin. He crashes through a window in the White House, and he starts to fight Merlin. Their fight takes them on page 10 out to the National Mall and the Washington Monument, where Merlin decides to use the Washington Monument, the giant obelisk spear-looking thing that we all know. We all pretty have a good little picture of that in our brains. He uses it as a javelin. He telekinetically moves it, uses it as a javelin to throw at Thor. Thor, in a very, very quick shift of his tactics, he wraps Mjolnir around the tip of the obelisk, and he is able to send it back to its original resting spot very calmly. And Merlin's like, "Okay, I got to think of something different." And then we see Merlin try to drop. Let me get my bearings for this. He tries to drop the Pentagon on Thor. He lifts up the Pentagon building, and he tries to drop it on Thor. And Thor, very shrewdly, he digs a small trench with Mjolnir, and he puts himself in the trench, and he's able to avoid being crushed by the Pentagon. On page 12, it gets even crazier. He's tried to throw the Washington Monument at him. He's tried to crush him with the Pentagon, and now he brings the Abe Lincoln Memorial statue to life, and he makes it this giant almost like stone, living stone statue. And the way that Thor is able to put the statue back down is he whirls the hammer and he kind of just gently blows it back. He blows it back to sit back in his chair. And then we see Donald Blake become the hero of the story. So Thor has done all these great things, but Donald Blake is the one that finally gets the heroic moment at the end. So Thor, in the heat of battle, he turns back into Donald Blake. And as Don Blake, he convinces Merlin that he's this shapeshifter, this powerful being that can become thousands of different, characters, and he can change his look thousands of different ways. And Merlin is tricked because he thinks, oh my gosh, this person is truly powerful. I better listen to him. And Don Blake says that he says, Merlin, I'll let you live, but only on one condition. You do exactly as I say. Merlin's like, oh, of course, you're so powerful. I must take you at your word. Don Blake says, return to your crypt and cast another spell, or whatever it was that enabled you to sleep for centuries. The stone lid will be sealed over your body, and you will sleep for another 1,000 years. So really, the way that Don Blake and Thor defeat him is by putting it back to the way it was the beginning of this issue. Merlin agrees, and he claims to not do harm to anybody ever again. We come back to the last panel where Jane says, I must admit that if you do lose a few patients at the office, you lose no one at the operating table. As a surgeon, Dr. Blake, you are a magician. Huh? And Don Blake says, thanks. And his last little thought bubble says, you don't know it, honey, but there's more truth than fiction in what you said. So get a little moment from them at the end of this issue. I will say about Merlin, it was kind of a nice twist on Merlin. Usually you see Merlin as kind of the supporting teacher role in the Arthurian legends. It was kind of cool to see him as a modern foil to Thor as a villain. I will say it is a weird choice, like wizards in Washington, D.C. That almost sounds like a kid's book. So we saw duplicates of Thor, evil versions of Thor. We saw wizards on the Washington Mall amongst the Washington monuments. This was a crazy episode of Throwback Thursday. I hope you enjoyed these issues. If you get a chance, go read them. If you don't have Marvel Unlimited, my goodness, get Marvel Unlimited. Like, Marvel isn't even close to like sponsoring this show, but I just got to say, like, spending the money to buy a subscription to Marvel Unlimited is a no-brainer to me. You get thousands and thousands of comics from all the way back to the golden age of comics in the 40s and 50s, all the way up to like a few months ago. You just have to wait a few months to get brand new comics. So there's my cheap little, not paid plug for Marvel Unlimited. That's how I'm able to bring these comics to you guys on the video, if you're able to watch the video. If not, I hope you still enjoyed the audio version of this. Thank you for joining me to break down these comics. Well, that does it for this edition of Throwback Thursday. I hope you enjoyed looking into these wacky adventures of doppelgangers and wizards coming back to life. It was kind of a nuts week here on Throwback Thursday, but I hope you enjoyed it. This continuing adventure that we have through the history of Thor, exploring his world, his adventures, and just really the foundation of this character. We're still in the first, just handful of issues. So we got a lot of ways to go, but I hope you're on the Rainbow Bridge to journey with us through this look at Thor's history. That all being said, some great ways you can support us as we continue this journey is by going to Instagram, following us at Across the Bifrost, and then going to iTunes, subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast just so more people can jump aboard this journey with us. We want as many people as possible to be loving this Thor-themed content, this Thor-focused adventure we're all on. So if you do those two things, we'd really appreciate it. In a few weeks, a reminder from the beginning of the issue, in a few weeks, we are going to have our Loki roundtable discussion, and we want you to be a part of it. We want you and your voice to be heard on that episode. So go to the link in this episode where it says leave a voice message. If you leave a voice message, we're going to put it on the show. You can be a part of that episode of Across the Bifrost where we're going to break down the entire season of Loki with the reviewers that we've had come on the show and talk about individual episodes. We're going to bring them all back on in a big panel discussion. It's going to be a lot of fun. That is an episode that I'm really, really, really looking forward to. And we also want you to be a part of it. So don't forget, go to the description, click that link, leave your voice message. We want to hear what you have to say about Loki. That is all for the show today, everybody. Be sure to join us on Monday, part 2 of Mackenzie Lee's interview. That is just so much fun. The interview, if you liked part 1, the interview part 2 gets even better. So you want to listen to that. It's going to be awesome. Have a great rest of your day. We're so excited that you joined us on the Rainbow Bridge today. And don't forget, friends, stay worthy.